Well, welcome and thanks for joining me today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community on topics of interest. And the topic of interest today is civilian developmental education. So we're here to speak and learn a little bit more about that. So, ma'am, Linda, if you could please introduce yourself and give us a little of your background.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Linda Leichty. I'm currently the Chief of Workforce Development here at the Lifecycle Management Center. I've been a career civilian with the Air Force for a little over 21 years. Time's starting to escape me a little bit. But over the last 5 years, I've really been involved in civilian developmental education, both from a professional program management perspective and just from a personal perspective. And I'll just briefly share my path up to this point and why I truly believe civilian developmental education is so important for our workforce. I started at AFPC in a career broadening position. It was specifically on the force support career field team. And it's funny because a career broadening position, it was the first time I'd ever knew of something like that. And I'd actually applied for it through USA Jobs. So I wasn't vectored the typical way that you would be vectored in a development team. But I got an opportunity for about 18 months to see what happens on development teams behind the scenes and how important these programs are for the development of our future Air Force leaders, civilian leaders. So about 18 months on the team there, I took what I learned there and brought it to the headquarters Air Force Material Command staff. And I was a program manager for civilian developmental education, along with some other things, from December 2018 until June of 2020. So this is CDE is very close to my heart. It's amazing to see individuals develop and really gain some amazing skill sets from these opportunities that the Air Force provides us.
Okay, thank you. And Mike, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Thank you very much, Daryl. I'm Mike Mathis. I'm the AFLCMC Civilian Developmental Education Program Manager. I've been in my current position for a little over 2 years, but this will actually be my fourth CDE cycle that I worked. Prior military, 27 years of active duty. I was in the force support career field, numerous positions at just about every level of the Air Force, working personnel and formal training programs. I also was a professional military education instructor for 4 years. Training, development, instructing are all near and dear to my heart. The last couple of years here working in workforce development at the center has really been a highlight of my 10 years of career civil service. I've worked closely with the executive director, Ms. Watern, who is a huge proponent of development for our civilian workforce. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to have that type of leadership and someone who supports everything we do at such a high level. I'm excited about the opportunity today to discuss CDE. I think it's invaluable. I was selected for a course here recently, the Leading with Impact. Unfortunately, the pandemic and current conditions have actually pushed my course back almost 2 years. So I still plan on going. I'm looking forward to it. It's just been held up a little bit, but very excited to speak with you today. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you very much. So let's start right at the top. What is civilian developmental education and why is it important? And we'll start with Linda.
Okay. Civilian developmental education, it is a centrally managed, centrally funded portfolio of developmental opportunities for our civilian workforce specifically. And it really is designed, even though you can, at all levels, tactical, operational, and strategic, its intent is to build and develop our future Air Force leaders, those who work alongside our military leaders, and really assist in that Air Force leadership succession planning. So the portfolio is very diverse. It can be as long as up to 3 years to 5 years in some of the experiential programs. It can be as little as 2 days. So it just depends on what it is that you're looking for in your career at this point in time. I can guarantee you there's something within this portfolio that would fit you at any point in your career. We can go down as far as a GS1 when it comes to eligibility, all the way up to a GS15. So the portfolio is incredibly broad, and there's something out there for everyone.
Wow. Mike, what do you say?
Linda is always great at hitting the high points, and it's tough to follow her always. But the real benefit of CDE is that it is centrally funded, so it's free. It's a competitive process, so you do have to apply and compete with others because there are quotas for each of the programs. Some have a lot of quotas, some have very few, so it can be very, very competitive. But, again, CDE is really designed to meet the long-term Air Force leadership needs. It's an opportunity for us as a service to develop our civilians to share leadership with military. We're preparing high-potential Air Force civilians for increased responsibility. Great programs that expose our civilians to different leadership theories at different locations, from different entities, different instructors. And a real highlight is an opportunity, especially when you go TDY, to interact with others who are civilian leaders or potential civilian leaders who you might never meet in a career, but you come together and you share experiences, and there's a lot to be gained from that. It's a very exciting opportunity, all about selecting the right person at the right time to get some really, really good leadership training.
Mm-hmm. So we touched a little bit about eligibility, but who is actually eligible to apply for this?
So, Mike, I'll take that.
Okay.
So any of your appropriated funded civilians, your APF civilians in a full-time permanent status can apply as long as they have 2 years of federal civil service by 13 March. And this year it's 2021. And that date is specific every year with the year actually rotating depending on what year it is that you're applying, because that 2-year mark, that's when the application process ends. So that's why 13 March is so important. And that's not waiverable. A lot of our hard charging, high potential new recruits to the Air Force are very interested in this portfolio. Unfortunately, you got to wait that 24 months in the position before you can apply. However, there are other opportunities available that they can dip into just to get that developmental train started. A lot of them are through Air University. We have the Emerging Leader course, which is a self-enrollment process. That's a great way to get folks started with this whole developmental continuum that we get to experience as civilians.
Mm-hmm.
You have anything to add, Mike? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would, while the 2 years of federal service is the key, and it's really at times a contentious, one of the only really contentious rules. Sometimes it's hard to understand why you have to wait the 24 months, especially for individuals who cross over from the military service. But it is an important rule. What it does is it puts everybody kind of at the same competitive advantage for that 24 months. And that first 24 months is really should be focused on building foundational competencies within your functional area. So before we start grooming you as a leader, we want to make sure you have a strong functional foundation, and then we start moving ahead into the leadership competencies. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to add, a lot of the career fields will have, in the programs, will have additional eligibility requirements. So you definitely want to go out to MyPERS and check out each one of the programs and its eligibility, possible limitations that are out there. They're not all encompassing. That the ones we mentioned so far are just the general for all CDE opportunities. And then career fields may also leverage other eligibility requirements, such as education level, must be a bachelor's or a master's, for instance, or you must be in a particular career field to compete for things such as education with industry. So there are some other idiosyncrasies out there based on program.
So basic prerequisites, you mean that you need to be aware of before you can apply for it. Okay, all right. Now I've heard that there's boarded and non-boarded applications. I didn't really understand what that meant. Maybe you could explain that for us.
That's a fun one because they've changed the language a little bit. The boarded and non-boarded really defines the development team and the central selection board. So non-boarded programs make it to your functional community only, your career field, and the development team will bless those particular applicants to move forward to the CDE office, who will then make the selection based on a cut line because you're competing against your peers and other functionals for those quotas. There are a lot more quotas in your non-boarded programs than your boarded. The boarded programs go to a higher level of scrutiny and evaluation. So within AFMC and within LCMC, our boarded programs are endorsed by Ms. Wadern, specifically LCMC. For those at the headquarters level, those are endorsed by Ms. Young. So our center CAs within the MAGCOM are very involved in the boarded process. That's a little bit different than the Air Force Personnel Center's advertisement. And the reason we do that is because, number one, our leaders they just really value the development of our civilians, and they put their money where their mouth is there. So they spend the time to review each one of these boarded applications going forward. Mm-hmm. It's very important. And you're competing against other potential Department of Defense components as well. Some of these quotas are only 1 to 2 for the Air Force. So they want to make sure that the best quality applicant goes forward. And it's really paid off. It's really paid off for LCMC. We've seen a tremendous selection rate for our boarded applications. So other differences exist outside of quota and the level of endorsement. Usually with the boarded applications, they're a longer term commitment. You're in training for a longer period of time, typically more expensive, typically require a mobility agreement at the end of that. And what a mobility agreement is that you sign a document once you're done with the training that you're going to be outplaced in not only in the best interest of the Air Force, but you do have a say in potential outplacement as well. But that mobility agreement is part of the application process. And the intent behind the mobility agreement is I send you to 3 years of a training opportunity. I don't want to put you back in the job that you left. That's not showing a good return on investment for the Air Force. We want to put you into a position of higher responsibility and leadership so that you can capitalize on those skills that you just learned. That's the intent. With mobility, however, it is possible, especially in a location like Wright-Patterson, where you can be outplaced in a different organizational level, but still not have to leave the geographic region. So there's some flexibility there. A lot of your non-boarded programs will not require a mobility agreement because they're shorter in duration, they're less on investment, more so targeting specific foundational competencies that may be a gap for you, such as let's see, teamwork, building teams, decision making, critical decisions, strategic thinking, those types of skill sets.
Mike, what do you have to add to that?
Well, I sit at my desk and all of the boarded applications for Ms. Wadern's endorsement and for our senior career functional advisor reviews come to me. And one of the questions that I get all the time is that question of what is the difference? And Linda just nailed that. But one thing I would just highlight is we use those terms boarded and non-boarded. Even the non-boarded applications still meet a competitive process. There still are, even though there are maybe more quotas, there usually still are more applicants than there are available quotas. So even though it has the nomenclature non-boarded, it is still technically boarded. It is still competitive. The records are lined up and a cut line is made depending on the number of applicants and the number of quotas. So we do struggle with that at times, and we do clarify that, but we still see a lot of the applicants get calls saying, hey, I applied for a non-boarded program. When do I go? Right. You still have to compete. The board still has to select you.
Okay, well, let's get into the competition then. What can a person do to make themselves more competitive, or what can a supervisor do if you've got a person in your care that is interested in taking one of these courses or competing for them? What can they do to make themselves more competitive?
That's an outstanding question. Supervisors first need to understand what the portfolio offers. They need to understand the programs that are part of that portfolio in a little more detail so they can have those guided discussions with their employees and help them determine which programs are appropriate for them at this particular point in their career, and that matches their short and long-term goals where they want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's the best thing the supervisors can do, is educate themselves about these programs. You don't need to know the minutia or the smallest detail about each one. That's not necessary, but just have a general understanding of what's available to this NH3 who's 1 year into the position, what's the best opportunity for them.
Right.
So it's having that discussion and then getting an understanding of what the employee wants. What's motivating that employee? Where do they want to be? Are they ready? Are they ready to go into a high performing position? Are they ready to move on to more responsibility? That takes some deliberate conversation and discussion. So that's where it starts. Now, the application process is really the easiest part. It's determining what exactly it is that I need at this moment in my career, and the supervisors agree that this is what you need at this moment in your career as well. There's this really neat tool that just was released 2 weeks ago on my Vector. It's called an Air Force Foundational Competency Assessment, and we'll talk about my Vector a little bit later as well. But an individual can go out at any given time and assess those 22 foundational competencies that the Air Force values and determine what areas of improvement they require. That's a great tool an individual can use, and then look at what the curriculum on the MyPers website, what does it target in those foundational skills? And then you can match up some of those opportunities with where you are in your career. This is a once a year solicitation. It happens the same time every year, January through March. And I want to foot stomp. Some individuals are not in a position to compete every year. So it depends on what your personal situation is, where you are in your career, where you are in your job, where you are from a personal lifestyle perspective. Not always these opportunities are at the right time, like Mike mentioned earlier.
Mike, you said that you see all the packages that come through. What are the ones that you see that rise to the top? What are some of the things that bring them up?
Well, I think it is a continuation of what Linda just said. The applications come in and you can tell that the supervisor has taken the time to sit down with the employee, the potential applicant, and actually look into portfolios and discuss, is it the right training at the right time? Is it going to further the employee's development in the direction that they need to go? Does it support the individual development plan? Is the individual the right fit for the program? We discuss a lot about the boarded programs and some of them being very high level and having very few quotas. We have one program, the Executive Leadership Development Program, which is an outstanding program. And yearly we see it has about 10 quotas service-wide. So to be competitive for that, you have to have a very strong, a very outstanding record. And what we see is individuals who have taken the time in my Vector to fully develop their resume so that their resume captures the breadth and depth of their experience, what they contribute, how it impacts the organization, the awards they've won. Very strong, fully developed resumes. And I know we're going to talk about my Vector a little bit later, but my Vector is in its third cycle for CDE. It doesn't automatically populate a lot of the resume, and it doesn't allow you to upload a resume. So you have to have very strong information to put into the system, because that is what the board sees. And then a real key component is the endorsement that the supervisor writes. I've seen packages come in that don't fare well. The individual applies and the supervisor says, yes, I highly recommend Mike Mathis for the program. And that's the end of the endorsement. Your strong endorsements will be fully developed. They'll talk about some type of statement of character about the individual and their leadership potential, which is a key. That's what the board's looking for. They explain how the candidate exemplifies the selection criteria for that program and how the qualities they have that are required for the program exist and how they exhibit them routinely. In a larger context, it'll talk about how that program is the right program for their career timing. The endorsement will also talk about where their standing is amongst the users, not just in their office, but within the center. Proposed endorsement from Ms. Waters captures they are really at the top of their profession, at the top of their organization, what they do. And each of the applicants, when they're putting their application together, in the past we kind of steered away from an assignment, a post-CDE assignment recommendation if it wasn't required. But now we're seeing feedback from the developmental team saying, even if it's just even a short course, or a person may not have a future assignment, explaining what the individual will do with that assignment and how it will further them as they continue to progress and become one of our center leaders. Putting all that together in a very concise manner and in an area that's pretty constricted and doesn't allow you a lot of room to write is key. And we see our supervisors struggle with that. So we're trying to put together to get that out and help, but those are really the keys. And it, like Linda said, CDE is an annual call. It happens every year. The programs, we see a core of programs that stay the same, but and some do change. About 10 or 15% of the programs will change in a given year. But it's okay to say no. You should be okay to sit down with your subordinate or your employee and say, maybe this program isn't the right program for your developmental need at this time. It's a different program. We don't, of course, want to tell anybody no, because all development is good, but maybe instead of a disapproval, redirecting them to one of the other courses that may be the right time for their needs, their developmental needs and their goals. Those are key, that it's the individual's goals and needs. It's a combination. Again, we're trying to put our high potential employees into these programs. We're trying to develop them to become our center leaders, our multi-domain leaders. So catching all that information and putting that into the application is key. Thank you.
Okay.
I do want to mention,
go ahead.
Just to add on to that, one key factor that we really don't discuss as much as we really should, and Mike alluded to that in the resume where you include your special accomplishments, any awards or medals as civilians that you've received. Performance is key. You need to show a history of high performance, and the only way you can truly show that is through your resume. So I'm going to foot stomp the resume. You need to put in very qualitative, quantitative, leadership types of projects, positions that you've held. The DT some members of the DT won't know you, especially if it's your first time applying. So you've got to sell yourself, and that resume is the best way to do it. And the endorsement statement. The endorsement statement, like he mentioned, we've seen some people not go forward who are outstanding applicants because the time wasn't put in to the endorsement statements. And there's two of them. One is your first level supervisor, and the second one may be the second level supervisor if it's non-boarded, or Miss Wadern if it's boarded. So that there needs to be some thought in those endorsement statements. And I'll also say, in addition to performance, that final endorsement statement is key to the DT also, because they really put a lot of weight in what Miss Wadern has to say on those packages.
Yeah. So where is there a place where employees or supervisors can go to see all of the various options for CDE and what the application processes are, requirements, that kind of information?
Yes. The hub for all things civilian developmental education is the MyPERS website, mypers.af.mil. Once you enter there, you're going to click on civilian employee on the tab. On the left side of the screen, it says force development. You click on force development, and it'll bring up a home page that links you to everything that is centrally managed, to include tuition assistance and other training opportunities that the functional communities provide. So it's all there for you. They're in the process of updating for academic year 22 now. So there may be some changes that you'll see tomorrow that you may not see on the screens today. So just keep checking back up until the time that the cycle starts on the 13th of January. And I'm just going to add this because we've had 5 new courses this year. They were released last week. One of them is a bachelor's degree. And the problem, I have to say it's a problem with that, is it's not a free-for-all bachelor's degree like they did with the civilian associate's degree program they released about 3 years ago. It's a very limited quota. So it's a boarded program, and it shares its quota with the master's degree, but there's going to be a lot of interest in that. So just take some time, go through the additions. Some of them are snuck in on you. They're not really highlighted on the page. So it's well worth your time to go through each one of the opportunities to see ultimately how it's possibly exactly what you need at this point, how it differs maybe from other programs when it comes to application or duration.
And Mike, what's the application process look like?
Well, for LCMC, well, actually for all the centers in AFMC, but I will speak specifically to LCMC. It actually does depend whether you're applying for a boarded or non-boarded program. For our LCMC applicants who are applying strictly and only for non-boarded programs, you can. It's important to note that you can apply for up to 4 programs. They can be all boarded, all non-boarded, or a combination. But just for individuals just applying for a non-boarded, they would go to MyPERS once the 13 January window opens. My Vector once the 13 January window opens. If they don't have a MyVector account, they'll need to build one. They would go out, they would build their resume, and MyVector is really unique in that when the application window opens, it becomes very individual specific. You click on the CDE application, and it pulls up just those programs you are eligible for based on your grade. So we get a lot of calls from people saying, hey, how come I'm not seeing program X? And it usually is because they don't meet the grade requirement. Each program, like we said, the 2-year service is the basic minimum eligibility, but each program does have specific eligibility requirement, usually tied to grade and then other factors. But putting together that good, strong resume and then completing the application, they have their first endorser provide their narrative comments, and then it's sent to the final endorser, who's usually the second level supervisor for the non-boarded programs in most cases. Once the second level supervisor completes their endorsement, that finalizes the application and automatically puts it in the queue at AFPC. For the boarded applications, this is where a lot of confusion comes in. For LCMC, the first level supervisor does the endorsement to the application. Then they would export the application with their endorsement language on it. The individual resume, they would export that as well. Then they would also complete a proposed endorsement worksheet, which we supply at LCMC to all of our boarded applicants, with a proposed endorsement for Miss Waters. It should be written at the senior leader level. And those are all sent to the CDE workflow in our office. At that point, once I get them, I review them for eligibility. I review them for accuracy. I review them for any type of grammatical errors. Based on our experience, if the endorsement seems to be a little shallow, we'll engage with the supervisor and try to beef that up. And then we send that to senior functional, and they review it as well. What they'll do is they don't just approve any, but if they think that it's not the right time for that program, they'll engage with the individual supervisor to discuss it. They may engage with the individual applicant, and they will either strengthen the application, give the applicant the ability to withdraw or to apply for a different program, and we'll review it again. Once the senior center functional review is completed, all the applications, we retype them all for any edits, and then we send them over to Ms. Waters' office, and she puts together a team to review them, and she puts her eyes on each of the applications and her endorsement probably about 3 times. She'll rewrite each one 3 times. As I mentioned before, she is a strong proponent of workforce development, and she is all in. So she really sets time aside and takes the strongest effort to put our boarded applicants in the strongest position.
All right, so we're just about at the end of our time now. So before we close, I just want to see, is there anything that we've left out or anything that you really want to reiterate before we wrap it up?
I would like to reiterate that take advantage of this opportunity to participate in these programs. They're amazing, and some of the individuals who've been through these programs, and you'll get to experience a few of their stories over the next podcast that we do. They're life-changing for some individuals. They really re-blue some individuals. So it's really amazing. The networks that you create across Department of Defense is incredibly beneficial. So take a look at the programs, take the time to research it, and find something that's good for you. Also, the cycle kicks off the 13th of January and will go through the 13th of March. There's internal deadlines to those dates that an employee needs to have their application in by, as well as the endorsements need to be done by. So pay very special attention to the AFPC published dates and the LCMC published dates for those boarded programs, and just get those applications flowing.
Yeah. All right. Mike, anything you'd like to add?
Yep, just quickly, we're about a month out from the window opening. Don't wait until the window opens to get out and get familiar with MyPERS, and even more importantly, MyVector. You can begin working on your resume right now to strengthen it and ensure it reads how you want it to read and how you want it to represent you at the when the development teams review or the central board convenes. It's the only thing that will represent you. So it's very important that your resume is uptight, and you have a whole month right now to work on that. So don't wait till that deadline. Mm-hmm. And I would just, one more thing, you're going to see a lot of conflicting information that comes out. You'll get information from the MAGCOM and from the center and from the career field teams. Just remember, if you are an employee in LCMC, we have a process and we will send that information out. And we'll ask that you adhere to that, especially for the boarded programs. And if you ever have a question, you can contact our office and we will help you out in any way we can. Thanks.
That's great. And do you have like a phone number or email address that people can contact for the office?
Yeah, I would ask that for application questions that they contact me at michael.mathis, MATHES .2@u.af.mil, or they can IM me. I am working from home, so that seems to be the best way. I'm very responsive, and I don't take leave during the CDE cycle, so I will get back with them just as fast.
Good deal.
That is a true
right.
statement. That is a true statement.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today. I think this has been very beneficial information for people that have heard about these programs but may not have known whether or not they can apply. Now they know that they can go and look at this information and compete. So thanks very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.